Hi everyone, a very good afternoon. So, as already stated, it is extremely a pleasure to welcome this large an audience to a very interesting, important session under the GST law. The provisions of Section 128A of the CGST Act, which provides for waiver of interest or penalty or both. So this has been a very fantastic scheme under the provisions of the GST law, providing for relaxations for the tax-paying community. So with respect to this, we will start the session to understand the finer nuances of this beneficial provision, the situations when we would be entitled to take the benefit of this amnesty scheme of 2024, and how and what are the practical procedures that needs to be undertaken, within what time each activity needs to be undertaken. So these are some of the important aspects that we would be discussing during the course of today's session now. So I have shared my screen now, so you can put up a thumbs up to say that my screen is visible. Is my screen visible, sirs? So before we begin, there has been a lot of requests from our clients and our active followers to really check with us on how we will be able to communicate the latest updates on a very timely basis. So here we have the QR code of our WhatsApp channel, wherein you will be able to get the live updates on a very real-time basis. So all the latest updates are there on a real-time basis. So we keep updating the content on a very daily or on a very systematic basis. So you can follow us on our WhatsApp channel to get very real-time updates. So once again, we thank you for being a part of this session, and it has been only with your support that we have been able to have this session continuously for these many days together. Right. So moving forward with this very interesting topic, the Samadhan scheme or the amnesty scheme, which provides the waiver of interest or penalty or both. Right? This is through the introduction of a new section under the CGST Act, which is Section 128A, and a new rule, Rule 164, under the provisions of the CGST rules. So what does it really come to say? So we would be having a synopsis of the understanding of the entire provisions of the law, and then we would read through the entire procedural aspects on a rule-to-rule basis. So the section covers the period from 1st July 2017 to 31st of March 2020, or even a part thereof. So it covers the periods of 1718, 1819, 1920. First 3 years of the implementation of GST is only covered under this amnesty scheme of 2024 or this scheme of Samadhan scheme. The situation when you would be eligible to claim the amnesty scheme is where any amount of tax is payable by a person chargeable with tax. So when there is a tax payable in respect of a taxpayer, then he can take the benefit of this amnesty scheme. The condition is that the tax amount, which is the subject matter of dispute, has to be paid in full, whether it is as per the tax amount determined in the notice or the tax amount determined in the order. The tax amount has to be paid in full. Then the question has naturally comes, when I am required to pay the tax amount in full, what is the amnesty scheme? Taxpayers would definitely be well aware that in addition to the demand of tax, there is always a demand of interest and penalty. So there is always an additional amount which is to be paid more than the tax liability that is demanded in the notice, which is the nature or the nomenclature of interest, which is for the delayed payment of tax, and penalty, which is for willful, which may be for even without any willful misstatement, no suppression of facts, no fraudulent intent, even when it was a genuine error, there could be cases where penalty is being imposed on the taxpayer. So this amnesty scheme does not give any relief on the tax amount which is liable to be paid. The relief is only with respect to the interest or the penalty which is demanded in the notice or the order as such. So the condition is that the tax amount demanded should be paid in full within the time limit which is notified, that is 31st of March 2025. So, do I have to make the application for the amnesty scheme within the notified date? Not at all. We would be discussing about that in the forthcoming slides. The condition is that I should be having a liability to pay tax and I make the full payment of tax within the date which is notified, that is 31st of March 2025. Then I am entitled to take the waiver of interest or penalty or both. So should I make any special application for this? Let's wait and discuss during the course of this entire presentation. So what comes first is something which is very clear under the entire ambit of the scheme. The activity of payment has to be first completed before the 31st of March 2025 in all generic situations. There could be another extraordinary situation where the payment is made at a later date, but in all generic situations under the amnesty scheme, the payment of tax which is required to be paid in respect of the 3 years, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, has to be paid before the 31st of March 2025. Only then you can make an application at all under this amnesty scheme of 2024 provided for under section 128A, read with rule number 164. The application will come only later after that. The application has to be made within a period of 3 months from the notified date. Very simple. The payment before 31st of March, which simply means to say that the application for the amnesty scheme has to be made April, May, June. Within 3 months, that is 30th of June. So the application for the amnesty schemes comes later. The reason why I am highlighting this in the very beginning of the presentation is for the reason that the scheme under the SVLDRS was a little different. The Sabka Vishwa Legacy Dispute Resolution Scheme or the various schemes that had been hitherto required the filing of an application and thereupon making of payment. But here, the first activity is the payment of tax. Then you make an application for the waiver of interest or penalty or both. So before we really dive deep into the scheme, we need to really know what are the various stages of litigation and whether am I at all eligible for the benefit of this amnesty scheme. So the proceedings under the entire GST law, as we would have presented if you have been part of our earlier sessions anywhere, you would have seen this is the general scheme of litigation as has been generally very clearly marked by our team's syntax team. So there could be some set of proceedings which are called as pre-SCN proceedings, which are the nature of scrutiny of returns in form A7010, audit which is being initiated and being conducted by the audit wing of the CGST or from the audit wing of the SGST department. There could be inspection, search, or there could be a test purchase, which is very rarely done today. Inspection during the movement of goods, or an assessment with respect to unregistered persons. I will be explaining in the forthcoming slides as well, but let me make it very clear now itself. If it is anywhere relating to any of these pre-SCN proceedings, if the proceeding is at the stage of this pre-SCN proceedings, we are not eligible for this entire amnesty scheme at all. If there is only an A7010 issued, there is no show cause notice at all issued, no eligibility under this amnesty scheme. If there has been an inspection or a search which has been conducted, no notice, no order still for issued, not eligible under the amnesty scheme. The eligibility for the amnesty scheme will only be with respect to an SCN related proceedings, that is with respect to DRC01A or an SCN issued under DRC01, or when there is a detailed order, that is a demand of tax or recovery notice, detailed order given along with DRC07. So these are some situations when the amnesty scheme becomes eligible. Even with respect to special proceedings, that is assessment of non-filers, the summary assessment, you are not eligible for this amnesty scheme. So as long as the proceedings remain in the left-hand side of the screen presentation, that is with respect to pre-SCN proceedings or special proceedings, you will not be eligible to this amnesty scheme under the provisions of section 128A. So, further, also there could be next stage of proceedings under the entire GST law, where I could be there under the first appellate authority, or if the GST tribunal under the provisions of section 112 gets constituted, my appeal could also be before the second appellate authority, or it could be because of various reasons before the High Court or Supreme Court. If there is a substantial question of law, then the matter could be appealed against the order of the tribunal to the High Court or Supreme Court. If the matter involves violation of the principles of natural justice, then at any point in time, under the provisions of the writ jurisdiction, the matter could be before these judicial authorities, before the High Court or Supreme Court. So what would happen if it is under any of these authorities, that is before the quasi-judicial or the judicial authorities, is also something which we will discuss thereupon during the course of this presentation. So we need to know whether at all there can be a notice which can be issued for the year 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 after at least this date. So in the month of November 2024, as we state today, the subject that is extremely very clear is that notice or an order under section 73 cannot be any more issued for in respect of the financial year 17, 18, 18, 19 or 19, 20, because the time limit, the extended time limit for the issuance of notice and as well the issuance of an order under the provisions of section 73 is already completed. The amnesty scheme covers only and only the notice or order covered under the provisions of section 73. A notice or an order under the provisions of section 74 is not covered under the provisions of this entire section 128A or this rule 164. Therefore, for with respect to section 73, it is already a settled position, and we at this point in time, as we stand in November 2024, will be able to have a reasonable amount of clarity on what are the notices for which we need to opt for this amnesty scheme, because there will not be any more further notices under section 73 in respect of financial year 17, 18, 18, 19 or 19, 20. These 3 years being the period covered within the amnesty scheme 2024. So what could be the various situations? Very practically, if we see these situations, if there is an ASMT 10, as I already told you, whether you can go for the benefit of section 128A, no. There is an audit para issued, no notice is still for issued, no, you cannot claim the benefit of section 128A. Audit discrepancies have been communicated, ADT 02 has been issued, no, you still cannot be benefit, you cannot take the benefit of section 128A. There is the voluntary payment you have made without any notice. Notice was not issued for the financial year 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. As a tax compliant taxpayer, having noted that there was a discrepancy, you have voluntarily come forward and made the payment of tax. Can you get the benefit of section 128A? No. The law is very, very specific that it covers only the notice covered under section 73. Voluntary payment will not be covered under the provisions of section 73. A notice is issued under section 73, but the reply was not given. Not a problem. Not a problem. Notice is issued under section 73. Yes, it covers any of the 3 years, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. Then you can be entitled to the benefit of section 128A. Notice was issued under section 73. You have given a reply, but the order was not passed. If the order was not at all passed, theoretically, yes, you can be entitled to the benefit of section 128A, but legally, whether there can be an order for any of these 3 years under the provisions of section 73? No, because the time limit is already lapsed. The time limit for issuance of an order under section 73, as we already showed you in the previous slide, is already long gone by, and therefore, if order is not issued under the provisions of section 73 for 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, then no further orders can be issued at all because it is time bound. But it could be that notice issued under section 73, the officer may invoke the provisions of section 74 stating willful misstatement, suppression of facts or fraud, and pass an order under section 74. But is that at all valid? Is that at all possible? No, because when the issues of willful misstatement, suppression of facts or fraud is not brought out in the show cause notice, then an order under section 74 is prima facie not possible. Therefore, the situation, then the notice itself is becoming time bound. Now comes the situation where notice was issued under section 73, you gave a reply, order was passed against the taxpayer, but appeal was not filed. You did not file an appeal. Time limit for filing an appeal is still available. Though the time limit for filing an appeal is still available, it is not mandatory that you need to go for an appeal. You can apply for this amnesty scheme without going for an appeal and get the relief of interest or penalty or both. Notice was issued under section 73, reply given, order passed, appeal was not filed. But the time limit for filing the appeal also got lapsed. So you cannot file any further appeal. Therefore, is it the end of all the proceedings? Or can you still opt for the benefit under section 128A? Yes, you can still opt for the benefit under section 128A because section 128A does not have the restriction that it is only in respect of an order for which the appeal is not filed and it is within the due date. No. Now, such conditions are not at all there as long as the issue pertains to the 3 years. Even if the order against which appeal is not filed, you can opt for the benefit of section 128A. You have filed an appeal. Still, yes, you can get the benefit of section 128A, but you have to withdraw such appeal. We will also discuss about it. If the order is passed by the first appellate authority or by the revisional authority, that is, the notice was issued under section 74, but whereas the appellate authority or the revisional authority holds that this is not a case under the provisions of section 74 and converts the case to the provision of section 73. Is the appellate authority or the revisional authority empowered to do the same? Yes. The appellate authority or the revisional authority under the provisions of section 75 can convert a notice or an order passed under section 74 to say that it is a fit case only under section 73. If suppose such an order has been passed by the appellate authority, yes, even in that situation, though the notice or the order was initially issued under the provisions of section 74, you can opt for that order also for a relief under the provisions of section 128A. Notice issued under section 74, the appellate authority, exactly this is what is also covered now. So, supposing very practical situations that really come to us to say, sir, before the amnesty scheme got notified, before we got any information about the amnesty scheme, they have already paid the interest and penalty. Can we claim a refund? No. Section 128A does not contain any provisions of refund. Therefore, if the interest or penalty is paid, you cannot claim any refund at all. The notice, when it is issued in relation to erroneous refund, then you are not at all eligible to enjoy the benefit of section 128A. But in one specific situation where there is in a notice, a part of the issue relates to erroneous refund, a part of the issue is relating to other issues, then we will discuss about it because that specific position has been clarified in the GST rules in Rule 164. But whereas prima facie a notice exclusively relating to erroneous refund, you cannot apply for the benefit of Section 128A. Wherever, as I already said, it is a case, it is pending before the appellate authorities, you are entitled to the benefit of 128A, subject to the condition that you have withdrawn the appeal before such appellate authorities. So, I get the benefit of the scheme under the provisions of Section 128A. Then, can I still also file an appeal against the order? That is an order. The demand in the order is rupees 1 lakh. I admit on one side to say, I will pay the amount of 1 lakh, do not levy interest and penalty. That is under the provisions of Section 128A. On the other side, I also dispute the appeal. No. Once you are covered under the provisions of 128A, no appeal shall be entertained. We will discuss about restoration of the appeal and all other related provisions as we go further. In very other specific situations where the order was in favor of the taxpayer, but the department has gone on an appeal. So at this stage, there is no demand in your against the taxpayer. When the department goes for an appeal, then the time limit for making the payment of tax is 3 months from the date of that said order. So when the departmental appeal order is against the taxpayer, then within a period of 3 months from the date of the said order, you can go for this amnesty scheme. So bringing the real actual provisions of Section 128A. So 128A subsection 1 talks about the taxpayers who are eligible for the benefit of this amnesty scheme. So it starts with the wordings, notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in this act. So any other existing provision under the GST law will not prevail, and this Section 128A will have an overriding effect because it starts with a clause which is called as a non-abstain clause. That is an overriding provisions over the existing provisions of other existing provisions. So since it starts with the wordings notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained in this act, where any amount of tax is payable by a person chargeable with tax in accordance with, you have clauses A, B, and C. Clause A talks about a notice, clause B and C talks about an order. Instead of reading the entire prima facie wordings of the entire legal provision, very simple, where you have only a notice, but the order is not issued, that is covered under the provisions of Section 128A, 128A1, Clause A. If there is an order, then it is covered under 128A1B or Clause C. So, coming to the rules which provide the procedural aspect of things. We will also touch base about other relevant provisions of the Act as it comes then and there. So, any person who is eligible for waiver of interest or penalty or both in respect of a notice. So, notice waiver 128A is contained in 128A1A. So, 128A, 8A, within bracket subsection 1, clause A. So, then he may file an application in SPL 01. Where you have only a notice, there is no order, then make an application in SPL 01. Also give the details of payment of tax in DRC 03. Then because there is no liability in your electronic liability register in respect of these 3 years, then make the payment in DRC 03. Make an application in form SPL 01 under the provisions of Rule 164.1. If suppose it is an order which is covered under the provisions of Section 128A1, Clause B or Clause C, then the application has to be made in form SPL 02. So, when it is in SPL 02, the payment of tax shall not be made in DRC 03. See, if the payment is against a notice, make the payment in DRC 03. If the payment is against an order, that is, the liability is already there in an electronic liability register, then make the payment against the liability in the electronic liability register. So that is the liability entry in your electronic liability register. Make the payment against such entry, then you will be entitled to the benefit of the scheme. But suppose instead of making the payment appropriately as provided for in Rule 164.2, that is against the liability in the electronic liability register, if you have incorrectly made the payment through DRC 03, still the law now very clearly provides that you can make the application in DRC 03A. That is, there is a liability in my electronic liability register. I have made the payment of tax in DRC 03. You will link both using this form DRC 03A and offset the liability in the electronic liability register. So therefore, that is the procedure which has been provided in the second proviso to Rule 164 sub Rule 2. If suppose, this is a very practical question that always very much comes by. Sir, the notice covers the period from 1718 to financial year 23-24. That is 1718, 1819, 1920, 21, 22, 22, 23 and 23, 24. 6 years are covered in a single notice or an order. Can a notice at all be issued? Can an order at all be issued in that manner? Is another separate question which we are placing before the various appellate authorities and the various judicial forums. But suppose there is a notice or an order for all the 6 years together, then what happens? Can I take the benefit only for the 3 years under the amnesty scheme? For the other 3 years, I will prefer appeal? No. 164.3 very clearly goes to say, where a notice or a statement or an order mentioned under section 128A1 includes demand of tax. Okay, that is with respect to erroneous refund. Partially with respect to erroneous refund and partially for other reasons. The application may be filed only after payment of the full amount of tax demanded on or before the date notified. You cannot segregate the issues in the entire notice or the order. Coming to 163 sub Rule 4, where the notice or the statement or order mentioned under 128A subsection 1 includes demand of tax partially for the period mentioned in the said subsection. What is the period mentioned in the subsection? Financial year 1718, 1819, 1920. Only 3 years are mentioned in the subsection and partially for the period other than that mentioned. That is the next 3 years. If it covers the period of 6 years, an application under sub Rule 1 or sub Rule 2, that is an application SPL 01 or SPL 02, may be filed only after payment of the full amount of tax demanded in the said notice. So, the full amount of tax demanded in the said notice very clearly clarifies the position that you cannot segregate the issues or the years with respect to a said notice or a demand order. A special situation with respect to the provisions where the notice or an order is issued under section 74, then converted to section 73 pursuant to the direction of an appellate authority or a revisional authority or a court. That is provided for in the first proviso after 128A sub Rule 1. Sorry, Rule 164, where a notice has been issued under subsection 1 of section 74 and an order is passed or required to be passed by the proper officer in pursuance to the direction under the provisions of section 75(2), the said order shall be considered to be a notice as referred to in 128A1A or 128A1B. What does this simple mean to say? This is the situation that I already explained to say that where the notice or the order is issued under the provisions of section 74, but the appellate authority, appellate tribunal or the court holds that the case is not fit under section 74, it is a fit case under section 73, then under the provisions of section 75(2), this is very clearly provided that this will be covered under the scheme of section 128A. So even in such a situation, then you need to make an application under the provisions of SPL 02 within a period of 6 months, from the date of the communication of the order. Here the time limit is given as 6 months because you will not know when the order under section 74 is converted to an order under section 73. The scheme time period, payment is before 31st of March. The application in SPL 01, application in SPL 02 is before 30th of June. But whereas the appellate authority holds later in December 2025 that this is a fit case under section 73, then from December 2025, within a period of 6 months, you are entitled to opt for the benefit of this amnesty scheme. With respect to withdrawal of an appeal or a writ, where there has been an appeal or a writ petition against a notice or an order, then the section 128A, subrule section 3, subsection 3 of section 128A and subrule 7 of rule 164 very clearly provides that it is important that you withdraw the appeal or the writ petition before applying for the scheme. Supposing I make an application for withdrawal, but the withdrawal is not granted yet, then what happens? Specifically very provided for in the proviso to subrule 7 of rule 164, where the application has been made, but the order for withdrawal has not been issued by the concerned authority till the date of filing SPL 01 or SPL 02, then I will upload the application for withdrawal only. I have made an application. I have discharged my responsibility. I will make the application in SPL 01 or 02 along with the copy of the application of withdrawal. The withdrawal application will be submitted. Once I get the order for withdrawal, then I have to upload that order within a period of 1 month. 1 month from the date of the said order. So I made the application. I have withdrawn the appeal or the writ petition as the case may be, if at all applicable. Then how does the proceedings get concluded? That is provided for in subrule 10 and subrule 11. So we have completed till 164 subrule 7. Couple of things again also missed. Directly we are jumping to 164 subrule 10 and subrule 11, which goes to say, if the proper officer is satisfied that the applicant is eligible for the benefit under section 128A, he shall issue an order in form SPL 05. So what we file is for SPL 01 or 02. What we aspire to get is SPL 05. So once we get SPL 05 in the online portal, then it means it is conclusion of all the proceedings. It is conclusion of all the proceedings. So once SPL 05 is issued, if at all there was a notice, then no further order will be given. If it was the case of an order, in the liability, in the electronic liability register, if at all there was interest and penalty, which is also there in the electronic liability register, then it would be modified accordingly. What is the time limit for issuance of SPL 05? So our time limit is very clearly defined. We need to make the payment before 31st of March, make an application in SPL 01 or 02 within a period of 3 months from the notified date. Very similarly, the officer also has a very prescribed time limit. Subrule 13A and subrule 14 of rule 164 provides to say the proper officer shall issue the order under subrule 10 within a period of 3 months from the date of receipt of the application. So I make an application, say for example, on the 31st of March, then they have a time period of 3 months. If I make an application at a much earlier date, then the order of SPL 05 will also be issued at a much earlier date. Say for example, the order in SPL 05 does not come within the time limit of 3 months. What happens? If the order is not issued, then also the law has very clearly provided then the proceedings are deemed to be concluded. So it is not required to follow up much with the officer and get the order in SPL 05. Even if there is no order passed within the time limit of 3 months, it is deemed to have been concluded. So can there be a notice for the rejection of application? So I made the application in SPL 01, 02. I have made the payment of tax to the reasonable understanding, reasonable interpretation of law as I have understood. Still, can the officer issue a notice? Yes, the officer can issue a notice in SPL 03 within a period of 3 months from the date of receipt of the said application. So within a period of 3 months, the officer has to issue a notice in SPL 03 or an order in SPL 05. If no notice is issued, no order is issued, then it is deemed to have been concluded. But once we issue and got a notice within a period of 3 months from the date of application, then we need to reply within a period of 1 month from the receipt of the notice in SPL 04. So we have a time limit only of 1 month to reply to the notice in SPL 04, and principles of natural justice has to be followed. That is, an opportunity of personal hearing will also be provided. So when a notice is issued, you have made a reply in SPL 04, then the order will be issued in SPL 07. Right? When the officer is not satisfied, then he will reject the said application and he will issue the order in SPL 07. Right? So this, where the notice is issued in SPL 03, the proper officer shall issue the order under Subrule 10 or Subrule 12. That is the satisfaction order in SPL 05 within a period of 3 months from the date of receipt of the reply. I made a reply on the 15th of January. Then within 3 months, the officer has to make an order. Then if the order is not passed, then it is deemed to have been concluded. Where I did not make any reply at all, then where I did not make any reply in SPL 04 to the notice issued under SPL 03, then the order has to be passed within a period of 4 months. In only one situation, the period of 3 months is extended to 4 months. That is where the officer has issued a notice in SPL 03, but the taxpayer did not reply to the same. Then the time limit is extended to 4 months. So, where the officer was not satisfied with the reply given by the taxpayer, then he issued an order. The order passed by the officer is again appealable. You can appeal before any of the appellate authority, generally the first appellate authority. If the first appellate authority rules in the favor of the taxpayer, then SPL 06 shall be issued and that is deemed to have been concluded. If the first appellate authority rules against the taxpayer, then I can go for the GST tribunal also and continue the proceedings. If I did not file any further proceedings and I have withdrawn the original appeal, see, the original notice was already there, I have got an order, I filed an appeal, but because of this 128A, I withdrew my appeal. But when the appellate authority rejects the entire scheme of 128A, then I have to make an application in SPL 08 for restoration of the original appeal. The original appeal will get restored. So these are the most important aspects and the procedural aspects of the entire schema of the GST Amnesty Scheme. We thank each one of you for participation in large numbers. We kindly request each one of you here to follow us at our WhatsApp channel. You can scan this QR code with your mobile phone to instantly see our WhatsApp channel and follow us at the WhatsApp channel so that you are able to get periodic updates. So this is all about the amnesty scheme, and we will take a few quick questions before we really wind up the session. If there are any feedback also from the session, we would be really glad to hear the same, because we have been having these sessions very continuously. This is what session now? This is the 47th session, and we will be having our Golden Jubilee and the first year anniversary celebrations also very soon. And in that, we really look forward for your feedback, as we really have been continuing this style of webinars every week. So it's been for the last 47 weeks, every week we have been having this webinar for the interest of the taxpayers and the tax practitioners. And we are extremely confident that with your support that we will be continuing forward for the many more weeks to come. So thank each one of you for your active participation. Now let us take up the questions. There have been extremely good number of questions here. So which year is applicable for the waiver of late fee and penalty? Yes, of course, the late fee, waiver and penalty is applicable for the 3 years, 17-18, 18-19 and 19-20. So, sir, kindly give the circular number reference if already notified under section 128A. Yes, you are exactly right. We have a circular with respect to this 128A. The reason for not touching upon this circular, for the reason that the Act and the rules very clearly provide for the modus operandi of the entire scheme of things. So circular number 238 of 2024, dated 15th October 2024, clarifies the method of approaching the scheme. The process has been well explained in the rules, as we have already dealt with in this presentation, and that is what is exactly clarified in circular number 238 of 15th October 2024. So we have the WhatsApp channel link also and the YouTube channel given in the Q&A box, which shall also be used. Okay. Balasubramanian sir, so we regret that you had some technical issues with respect to the audio. I hope that it got resolved very quickly. ITC restricted due to late filing of GSTR 3B. Is that eligible now? Yes, of course, that's a separate scheme altogether. That is under the provisions of section 16 subsection 4. Because of late filing of 3B, ITC was made ineligible. Yes, there is a very specific provision under the provisions of section 16 subsection 5 and section 116 subsection 6. That is reserved for a very specific discussion. This is with respect to the waiver of interest or penalty under section 128A only, which was discussed. But I will just touch base since the question was raised that if no notice was issued, notice will not be issued. If the proceedings are before the appellate authority, then the appellate authority will give the relief. If the proceedings are before the adjudicating authority will give the relief under section 16 subsection 5, 16 subsection 6. Subsection 4, 16 subsection 5, 16 subsection 6. These reliefs are for 4 years. Benefit of section 128 is only for 3 years, but whereas the relief for section 16 subsection 4 is with respect to 4 years. So that is a separate subject, and we did not really want to club, but since the question has been asked. What about tax paid as per section 16 subsection 4? Can we get a refund, sir? So whatever tax was paid, reversed already under the provisions of section 16 subsection 4 will not be eligible. So that is why whenever there is an issue which has some amount of ambiguity or lacks fairness, we generally advise litigate. Continue the litigation, because GST is a new law and there is a lot of concepts which are evolving. So if you feel there is something right in your side, litigate, continue to litigate, so that there would be justice at some point in time. So pending 16.4 cases can be rectified as per section 16.5 and section 16.6. Yes, of course. So when it comes to 16.4, the very clear provision is that where there is no, where the order is already issued or where the notice is already issued, there is conclusion of the proceedings. Only in such a situation, you need to make an application for rectification. We will definitely have a very detailed presentation. So, Prakash Kodihalli Rangappa sir, we will definitely look forward for your participation in the next session. So, we will definitely share the presentations in due course of this session. When will forms of SPL 01 and all the various forms be available in the common portal? Vamsi ma'am, yes, this forms are not in a hurry, because the scheme requires the payment of tax before the 31st of March, and there is another further time period of 3 months for filing an application under the amnesty scheme. So therefore, the portal, even if still not made available, we can still wait. Where do I file the SPL 01 application, sir? Yes, Sandhya ma'am, this application has to be made in the online portal. As Vamsi ma'am has rightly noted, the forms are still not yet notified. Once the forms are made available in the portal, we will discuss or take you through these forms as a practical walkthrough. So thank you for thank you for your wonderful presentation. Thank you, Surya Narayanan sir, for your kind words. So order issued, we didn't pay, but they have frozen the bank account and the money got debited. Can we claim the benefit under this section? So we can file a writ petition or an appeal to say that the recovery of money, the payment of tax was not voluntary against the notice, but it was taken by recovery proceedings under the law. Therefore, file a refund application for refund of tax which was already recovered and continue this. Yes, Muthusa, because as I already told you, continue to litigate because the law is still not yet settled. So, sir, if an order covers 17-18 to 23-24, how to proceed? Yes, that is illustration. I already explained also. The law also, the rules also very specifically provide that when it covers multiple years, then pay the demand for all the years covered in the notice, and only in respect of those years covered under the amnesty scheme, you will be entitled for the benefit of interest or penalty. Thank you for this webinar, especially this 47th webinar. Thank you so much, sir. We will definitely forward the PPT. Thank you for sharing your email IDs. ASMT 10 later on issued DRC01. Now relief 128 is eligible. Yes, if DRC01 is issued within the validity period, check whether it is time barred. If the DRC01 is time barred, then no further proceedings. If it is within the time period, then yes, it is eligible. Well done, sir. Many thanks to Zentax. Thank you so much, Sapan Kumar, sir, for your kind words. Can we file an application of amnesty scheme before 31/3 after paying the tax? Yes, if the tax has been paid, once the forms are made available to the portal, yes, you can make an application even before 31st of March 2025. When the GST SPL forms are enabled in the portal, definitely I am not part of the GSTN to make the forms available, but we hope that it would be made available soon. Thank you, Srinivasan, sir. Thank you for your kind words. The adjudication authority, apart from levying tax, penalty, and interest, has also levied late fee also. Whether late fee has to be paid along with the tax before opting for the waiver. So there is no specific condition of payment of late fee, but late fee is not waived off. Therefore, requirement of payment is there. But whether it is to be paid before the notified date is not a very specific condition. Can you, sir, this webinar in this session? Definitely, we will plan it in the forthcoming session, sir. If the tax amount was reversed in 3B, can we go for the amnesty scheme for interest or penalty? Padmanabhan, sir, no. When it is under voluntarily through GST or 3B, when there was no notice. If there is a notice, then of course, continue to make an application under the amnesty scheme. We will get further circulars and we will hope that we get the fair justice. Can we pay the tax now and file the application before 31/3? Yes, you can make the payment of tax now and file the application. Whether SPL0 forms are live? No, it is not live, as I have already clarified. Order passed for financial year 18-19 issued under section 74, but not fraud. But appeal filed for the same, waiting for hearing. So insist upon the appellate authority for and quote the provisions of section 75 subsection 2. Tell them that there was no fraud, no willful misstatement, no suppression of facts under the provisions of section 74. Therefore, invoking the provisions of section 75 subsection 2, the order under section 74 has to be converted to section 73. Once it gets converted to section 73, you will be eligible for the benefit of section 128A. So these have been the substantial questions. So with this, I think we will, one last question. So as I already told you, what is the circular number? Circular number 238 dated 15th October 2024. So circular number 238, notification is not the relevant factor. It is all about section 128A read with rule 164. So these have been some of the important aspects relating to the most awaited amnesty scheme under the GST law. So we thank each one of you for your patience.